Good morning. I'm still in my pajamas, but I wanted to make this video because the idea came to me and I felt that it's important to share. And I really should be cleaning for Pesach, I really should be davening. I have a lot of things I really should be learning a little bit. There's a lot of things I should be doing, but I think this is a little bit learning also. The message I just felt it was important to share is that everybody has to learn the world does not revolve around you. I've been thinking about developing a course for rabbis, but really for anybody, about this idea. Something I would really like to share. It's something like a rabbinical training program, like I went to some 12 years ago. The world doesn't revolve around you as an individual, and the world doesn't revolve around your culture. What do I mean by that? So I'm Jewish. And I think I can demonstrate this by an incident I remember when I was in college. Wrote about it. I seem to remember I wrote a poem about it. Don't remember exactly the wording of the poem, but I remember I had gone to Borough Park for Shabbos, and I was on the F train going back to Queens, and I was sitting there, and across from me I noticed two things. So kind of to the left there was a woman sitting there, and she was reading a book, and the title of the book was Chernobyl. A few moments later, a few young hipsters, whatever, I don't know how you call them, they got on, and they were talking, let's go to a party tonight. Where's the party? They said in Williamsburg. Now, for those who don't know, Chernobyl, before communism, was a big Jewish town. It was a majority Jewish town, and as far as the Hasidic movement goes, it was a very famous Hasidic dynasty that came from Chernobyl, and until today, you have several men who have the title the Chernobyl Rebbe. Williamsburg in Brooklyn, the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn has a very large Hasidic community, and the Satmar community, Rabbi Teitelbaum, of course, was the one who made the very large community, even though there were communities there for decades before that as well. And the point that I want to bring out is that in that whole book about Chernobyl, I don't think the Twerskys were mentioned. I don't think the Maranaim was mentioned. Maybe a brief, fleeting mention. I was talking obviously about the nuclear disaster in the 80s. And so I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but I said to the left of me was a Chernobyl with no Twerskys, and to the right of me was a Williamsburg with no Teitelbaums. The point I want to bring out is that the world doesn't revolve around me, the world doesn't revolve around you, the world doesn't revolve around your culture. If you're Jewish, if you're not Jewish, if you're Jewish, don't walk around thinking that everyone in the world is thinking 24/7 about Jews and Judaism and whatever, Israel or whatever. They're not. And whatever else, take yourself out of the echo chamber, take yourself out of the bubble for a moment. That doesn't mean to forget about who you are, but just remember that you're not the whole world. And I think when we engage with the world in that way, we'll be more effective. If we're cognizant of that fact, we'll be more we won't look so foolish, and we'll be able to whatever, we'll be able to be part of the world more. We'll be able to interact more with the world when we remove ourselves from this idea that the whole world revolves around us. If we exist as part of the world, I think really our voice will be much stronger. Whatever, I don't mean just my personal approach and my community, I mean whoever is listening. You're on the right, you're on the left, you're in the center, you're Jewish, you're Christian, you're Muslim, you're Buddhist, whatever it is. When we remove ourselves from this idea that the world revolves around us, and we recognize that we're part of a greater whole, our own personal goals are actually strengthened by that, whatever your goals are. And because when we strengthen others, we strengthen ourselves. I remember Rabbi Jonathan Sachs said that religion gains the most power when it relinquishes power. And it's not true only about religion, it's really true about everything. All these things now, I mean, the irony that I personally, although the current president wasn't my first choice, I'm very happy with the way things are going with him. I find it ironic and counterintuitive that there's so many people who oppose the president, who oppose the current regime, who are begging that the current regime, that the government should become more powerful. The point, for example, the Second Amendment is to keep the government weak. Now, it doesn't mean that there's anarchy. The Whiskey Rebellion was wrong because the taxes imposed on whiskey were legal and just. And so there's no justification of something like the Whiskey Rebellion. But an armed citizenry, or a potentially armed citizenry, I personally don't own any guns, but the potential of an armed citizenry is a deterrent against tyranny. And you had the people who oppose the current government want to give them more power. It doesn't make any sense. And I think if people step out of their own bubble, their own echo chamber, they're going to wind up also being empowered and strengthened themselves. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment, and all the best.